I just think of everything that stemmed from starting with this program and basketball, and just like how that applies to everything I do now and all the amazing memories that it's given me over the years, long after I was like all out when it came to training.
Hello and welcome to the Maxx Out Peak Performance Podcast. I'm here as always with my dad.
How you doing?
And with our first ever guest, Brent Burrows. Say hello, Brent.
How we doing, everybody? Good to be here.
So we want to talk to Brent. He trained a lot with me. So he has been one of our top athletes that we ever trained based on training, based on just quality of work that he put in, and then based on what he's done since training. He's been able to do great things since high school when he did a lot of the work with us, in college when he would come back. So he was definitely at the top of our list for people to talk to starting off this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I put Brent in the gold, platinum, diamond standard of guys we've trained. And Brent, we love having you. Thanks for being with us from Dallas tonight.
Yeah. So, Brent, can you tell us a little bit about where you are now and what you're doing over in Dallas?
Yeah, so after graduation from college in May of 2018, I was continuing the job hunt, and I was still living in Ann Arbor, and I had been staying in contact with recruiters from Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. Most people would know it as like Chrysler or Jeep, and was getting shuffled around there. It was a very long process, but then in August, I was offered a job down in the Dallas office, and then 2 weeks later, I loaded up a truck and moved down here. And so now I'm working at our regional office in Dallas, where I work with a group of dealers, and I'm a sales manager for them.
Nice. So, obviously, you've always been a car guy, so this is a good fit for you. This is kind of like your dream job that you wanted for the last couple of years, right?
Absolutely. I never thought of this job specifically. I didn't really know what this entailed, but this is definitely, if you want to be in the automotive business, this is a great place to start.
Nice. So, just talking about Brent's history a little bit of backstory. He went to charter school here in Holland that really focused on grades. He had great grades all throughout high school. One of the top kids in our class, GPA-wise, and went on to then go to Michigan. But before that, he started playing basketball with us because he came to our high school from the charter school. And, he started our training freshman year, correct?
Yeah, the summer before freshman year in a minimal capacity.
Yeah. And it's not like you were like this all-star athlete necessarily coming in.
Far from it.
Yeah, but none of us were. But you've made great strides kind of going along to go from someone that liked basketball to someone that was putting in work every day, holidays, vacations, all kinds of stuff like that to make sure that you were in the best position possible going forward. And I want to talk about that more later, but my first question is, were you born this way? I mean, you kind of are this ultra successful guy, and you pretty much have succeeded in everything that you've wanted to do. We kind of talked how you weren't necessarily that way in 8th grade, but how have you gotten to do this kind of stuff? Because you got to go to your dream school, get your dream job. You did exactly what you wanted to do in high school. Kind of talk us through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I was definitely not born this way. Even in school growing up, I had specialized reading help. I didn't perform very well in classes oftentimes, and all through elementary school. It wasn't until I started in middle school that I actually kind of hit a stride when it came to schoolwork and stuff like that. And then genetics wise, I did not get the best genetics for athletics and for many things, but it was all predicated on working with what I had and just putting in the time.
Nice.
Well, and that's one of the questions as a follow-up, Brent. You know, we preach at Maxx out hard, consistent work, and over time that builds a foundation. I always thought you took to that philosophy really, really well. You were tailor-made for what we did. How did that jive with the way you were raised? Because I know your parents have a strong work ethic. Both are incredibly successful themselves. But how does that fit in, do you think?
Yeah, so it's literally everything you get, you have to earn it. My dad was that way. I talk about him a lot because he was an athlete, and I mean, he had to work for everything he got. He eventually was able to work his way up. I mean, he grew up on a farm, and so I had to balance farm, schoolwork, and then being an athlete. And he worked his way and played football at the University of Michigan, and that was just a testament. And he wasn't even as good a football player in high school as he was a basketball player. He just had more tools. But that just goes to show you how much you got to work for it. And then all through his career, same with my mom, her career was the same way. And so they brought me up that way. And I can say pretty much everything along the way, it's been earned. There's nothing been handed to me.
Yeah.
They made sure of that, and that you got to earn everything you get.
Do you buy the argument that great athletes are made or that great athletes are born?
I'd say in a very few select cases, athletes are born, but athletes are made to suit what tools they're given. And many times tools and genetics go unused, but regardless, it has to be tailor-made to utilize those tools. It's rarely is it ever just born.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how you grew kind of as an athlete. Can you kind of walk us through? Obviously, we know how you start off middle school, size, weight, ability, to freshman year to sophomore year, junior year, senior year, kind of what you did on each specific team. What you were doing for weightlifting, for training, stuff like that. I know it's a lot to try to go through, but 8th grade year, what did you look like? What did you do for basketball? Kind of that stuff.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick little recap of every year. It shouldn't take too long, and then I guess I'll let you do follow-ups on any specific points you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So 8th grade. And in middle school, I mean, I was for that charter school, my 8th grade year, I was the best player on the team. And for the conference as a whole, I guess pretty just a solid player in that league. But that being said, I never knew what it meant to really put in work for a specific sport. I didn't know at that time. I didn't even know what AAU was. I didn't know what it really meant to be good. And that was a shock and a realization I had when going to high school. Fortunately, I was able to, as we touched on a little bit earlier, minimally get involved the summer before my freshman year. And that's when I first met Sam and Tim. And then freshman year, I was 5'10", 125 pounds. And that summer before freshman year really helped me just kind of get in tune with the program and everything. And I was the 8th man on the freshman team. We had a pretty solid year. We were 16-4. Mm-hmm. Yeah, grew a lot, and I learned a lot just about what it would actually take to be good that year. That year was more about just getting a plan for the future than anything. And that summer, was lifting, was doing whatever I could. I don't remember exactly what we did that summer after freshman year.
I remember in the fall we were doing a lot of the track work mixed with jump training. And that might have been back in the summer too. We were doing all that. We would do the long distance running mixed with the
That's
auxiliary lifts, and then mixed with jump training and stuff like that.
Oh, and acceleration.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
So we kind of tried everything that the high school did, that they pushed, and then we kind of moved out of that as we got older. But we did more of our own stuff, I think, as we went along.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, totally right. We tried to utilize the tools given to us or like provided to us, but eventually that became not satisfactory, and we then eventually branched off. But then that fall of my sophomore year was my first official Maxx out session. That might have been, that's definitely up there when it comes to like my favorite like seasons. I always break it down into seasons because that's usually how the programs work. It's either the fall or the summer, spring, winter, doesn't matter. But that fall was like my first official one, and I know I made a lot of gains. I think I gained probably like 4 inches on my vertical just in that fall alone. And that led me into my sophomore year. So we were doing all that training, and then the fall was really beneficial. I think we also had a fall basketball league, if I remember right, at maybe like the courthouse.
I think we did, yeah. Yeah, because I remember doing it with some of the then seniors. But one thing that I do remember is if you were 125 going into your freshman year, I remember how much we both weighed sophomore year, because we used to have contests to see who would weigh more every day in strength class, and we were both floating around 170 all the time. So that means you gained 45 pounds, right? Because
that wasn't sophomore year.
That was sophomore year. We had the same strength class then.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't think I was 170. I thought we were more like 150.
I was 140 going in. I was 170 by sophomore year.
Wow, you really did train hard. I don't know.
Well, I know I grew at least 3 inches between freshman year and sophomore year.
Because that was 18 months later, because it was in the winter. It was like January.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Anyways, so
beside the point.
Yeah. So sophomore year.
Sophomore year, that led me into the JV year and had high hopes for that season. Started off the season well. Was a starter. I was averaging double digits in scoring and playing really well. And then for whatever reason, I had my minutes cut, wasn't a starter anymore, and was playing very minimally throughout that year. That was a tough year, and one where had to just cling on to whatever in terms of basketball still made it worth it, really. Mm-hmm. More on that to come, because didn't think it'd get any worse than that, but it sure did.
So tell us about how it got worse your junior year then.
Yeah, so after that sophomore season, I remember one point. The other point about that was I was being asked to like practice with the varsity and train with the varsity through that too, and I always would think that would have been a good sign. But then by the end of the year, when I wasn't playing at all, like I was being asked to film for the varsity, and that was just a big shot that I took personally, and wasn't really happy in all that. And then that spring, played AAU for the first time, and that, like, I'd equate that to my freshman year. It was just a huge learning experience. I didn't play a ton, but it just was a great opportunity. It was a great learning experience, and that would lead us into the summer. I mean, did the same things, trained, lifted every day, worked on my own in my driveway, did whatever it took. But then come my junior year, was thinking was going to be a solid role player and really contribute, and that's far from what happened. Many games I never saw the floor, and And that was the lowest of lows when it came to basketball and training and sports. It just didn't seem right after 3 years of not playing a ton and the most I ever played was freshman year, and then it was just all downhill from there. But still, like that whole 3 years out of 4 years of a high school experience, to have it be like that, and just the amount of work we were putting in, it just didn't seem like the work was equating to results at that point. It was, and I knew I was made for more, but it just wasn't panning out that way. And I mean, there was a time where literally I considered stop playing basketball, just go do something else.
Well, I remember, Brent, because I sat with your parents quite a bit during that year, and I was struck by the fact that, unlike a lot of parents that complain and talk about the fact that their kid isn't getting a fair shake, your dad was absolutely consistent, saying, well, he's just got to find a way to be better. He's got to find a way to get on the floor, whether that's working harder, working smarter, working differently. And that struck me as an incredibly astute and very unique perspective from a parent, after having been around parents of athletes for a lot of years by then. And then talk about what happened in the spring of your junior year, because I had the pleasure of coaching you on the AAU circuit, but it was truly one of the best stories I've ever been around from that perspective, and what happened that spring.
Yeah, so that's a good point that you brought up about my dad, and that was always his position. And this is a side point, but I want to preface this to anyone listening that that junior year season, I was taken like out of my element, and I was asked to do things that I wasn't accustomed to doing, and that wasn't my forte. I think that partially played into why it went the way it did. But for anyone else who might be starting to get put in that position, you can't let yourself get taken out of what you do well, because then that doesn't show well on you. Like, I was playing a backup center to a guy who was 6'5", 300, and that's not going to do me any good because I can't play that position. But they were just having me scout for him and like literally play that, and that's not what I do. Especially at that point, that was long before I was more versatile in my play style. But then that spring, I played for the Maxx Out Hoops team, coached by Tim, and that was probably the best 4 months of basketball of my entire life. I mean, was I the best I ever was? No, but it was competitive basketball. I was in great shape, and we were training a lot. We were practicing, and I started all but one game that spring. And it was a very satisfying conversation when our varsity coach asked us the Monday after our first tournament, well, how did it go for you? And I'm like, I started all but one game. I had one game with 20 points, played really well in all the other games. He's just like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah.
Well, and one of the best games from that entire spring was when you had 23 points, including 7 3-pointers, against the Division II AAU state champions in the state of Michigan. And I still remember the look on the coach's face, because he couldn't believe that this guy who didn't look all that unique just lit them up from start to finish. And the reaction from the varsity coach at your school was priceless, as I told him that as well. So that was a great spring to see how everything kind of came together and led into that great summer season you guys had before your senior year.
Yeah, that was a very, very special time. That game at Lloyd Norrix against the Lightning, that was also a game where I was guarding a guy who was 6'9", and he didn't do much. And I just remember it was that game was one of those moments where it's I never felt tired. It just seemed like a blur, just going out and doing it. Didn't you have to think about it at all?
And just for reference, you're 6'2" and 200 at that point, or 190, something like that?
The AAU season, I was 6'2", 185.
Okay.
And for the record, I could put you on anybody that was a forward or a center, and that was one of the things we said is if you're going to play that position, you got to be able to guard anybody at the 3, 4, or 5, which you did incredibly well, and it was a great mismatch on the offensive end for us as well.
Yeah. And at that point, we were training, I think it was Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday.
2 days a week training and 2 days a week practice, Friday off, and then travel on the weekends.
Yeah, unless we had a game on Friday or something like that too for a tournament. Mm-hmm. So we were going all the time, and then we also lifted 5 days a week on top of that in class for an hour through strength and conditioning class. So we were going really hard going into our senior year. Then senior year during the summer, we did some training. A lot of lifting by ourselves and stuff like that because there's less formal training in the summer. Some team camps and stuff like that.
Well, and I do remember, Brent, one of the highs, one of the great successes I thought for the summer was coming in the Final Four of the Michigan State tournament or camp and making it to the Breslin Center. I think it was one of the first playoff games. You hit 2 free throws in overtime. That was the difference in the game. And not that I didn't know you were a great shooter before then, but I knew you were clutch. But that was kind of when your varsity coach got to see it for the first time. And that we were on the floor of the Jennison Fieldhouse as you guys took that section of the tournament. But just to see everybody kind of have that aha moment for Brent Burrows as a shooter and as an integral member of the starting 5 was really cool because at that point things had pretty much switched 180 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was definitely the first time where the varsity coaching staff got to see like a clutch performance from me, for sure. And then even the game after that, we played Consortium, and they were just
Detroit.
Yeah, out of Detroit, and they couldn't believe that they were losing. Mm-hmm. And like, I've never been a shot blocker, but that game, like, it was getting down to the end, and they had a guy on a fast break layup, and I did like a chase down block on him, and people were just like, "What in the world just happened?" And that was also a special moment, right before the Breslin Center.
Well, and to be clear, and I tell people this all the time that we train because of where you were your junior year and then basically starting all but one game of your AAU junior year and then all of the summer league games before your senior year, all of the fall league games before your senior year, and then every game your senior year, setting some records for the school for three-pointers made and percentage and all. Were you aware at the time how things had shifted so significantly for you over a fairly short amount of time?
At the time, no. I mean, like I said before, I knew I was made for more, but I could never have anticipated that kind of seismic shift and the way that probably, 12 months of basketball, what those 12 months were going to hold after the previous 36, the way that went.
Well, and let's talk about that. As you know from training as long as you have with us, we do talk about hard work and consistent hard work and more hard work and putting the time in. How did that play into the change and that seismic shift you just talked about?
I think all of that just kind of allowed me to make that transition. I mean, without having a foundation of work and a body of work to back up what happened, it never would have happened. There's not a chance. And so much of that, when the opportunity was given in the AAU season to step up and play, going through all that training, I knew in my mind, was like, I've worked so long for this, it's now or never. And having all that experience, all that time put in, I had the confidence to go for it.
You've been around us, like I say, and like I said a few minutes ago, for a long time. You've done a lot of workouts with us. You've helped us train other athletes. If you had to name either your favorite workout or the favorite type of workout that you had with us, what would you say?
I would say, looking back, my favorite times were probably the basketball-specific workouts, like at Berghorst. I always was very fond of that place. It just seemed like it made you feel like we're just going in, putting in work, and no one else knows we're here, but that's okay. But when it came to some other workouts, I always enjoyed the hill for different reasons. That one, you really felt like I just accomplished something, and definitely saw results from that. But I was always very fond of the weight room circuits.
So, having said all that, tell us what your least favorite max out workouts were. And we all smile about that because we all have our various memories.
Yeah, I would say probably the first summer of the hill. So the hill before my junior year. That was when we were doing more longevity and time as opposed to more focused exercises on the hill. So we were out there for like 45 minutes in the heat of summer when it's 80, 90, 100 degrees. And then I'd say also my least favorite was like the 13 station band workouts, doing like 6 sets at a station. And we were there for like, and you're like literally going for close to an hour probably.
Yeah.
And I think that also is just consistent with just getting better at it. So, like, obviously those 2 sessions that I just described were 2 of the earlier sessions. Yeah. And I mean, Maxx Out and Peak Performance has changed a lot since then in how we approach things and what we do. And so I just think back then it was not close to the athlete I was later, so it just made those ones all the more difficult.
I'd agree with you on that too. Looking back on it though, I don't think I'd change that because I think that everything we've done has been good for one thing or another. To me, the hill workouts aren't as much about getting extra inches on your vertical or, you know, increasing your bench press that much. It's all about like how much.
It won't do any of those things.
Yeah, it's like how much can you get through? How much can you focus when you don't feel like being there? When every step is hard. There's nothing that's like super fun to do because you're running up a hill, doing different stuff up the hill. But there's nothing that you can see, like you can't see a half step improvement on the hill, but you could see a half-inch improvement when you touch the rim for the first time. So it's more mental games there than it is about strictly, trying to get to the next goal because you don't have goals for a hill. There's nothing that you can do that
the gains you get from the hill, where there are significant athletic gains you get from that, but it's just hard to quantify and it's hard to see.
Yeah.
Not like a vertical or a jump shot or your ball handling or something else that we do.
Yeah.
So tell us, Brent, what have you learned about yourself? And again, since you were kind of there at the beginning, almost there from the complete start, what have you learned throughout this entire body of work that you've had from a training perspective that you can apply to your life? And we talk to our athletes all the time about that, but what advice would you give them?
I just know that with this body of work and going through everything that we've done, I know that even given a bad situation or starting from near the bottom or at the bottom, I know that I have it in me to where if I put in the work and I utilize what I know I have, I can make significant improvements and claw my way up.
And do you think that applies not only in sports but in life generally?
Oh, absolutely. Because like right now, I'm the lowest rung at the company in this in our division, and but I'm confident that I can work my way forward. And a lot of that goes back to just what we've done and the experiences I've had, which Maxx Out is no small part of that.
Now, I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed in myself and the people around me, and in you too, that makes a successful person is being positive. I never hear about someone that's in a great situation that always complains all the time about how they don't get this or how this is hard or how someone's not like paying attention to them, something like that. Do you think that's like a big secret to success too? Because I see it all the time. We see it with kids that we train. When there's a switch that flips from they're like screaming and complaining about doing something the first day to like 5 workouts in, they're like, can we do this? Can we do that? Kind of that kind of thing. Looking on the positive side, always trying to do more eventually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I like to think I'm a pretty positive person otherwise. And so now when any of those various situations you just described come up, I just go back to, okay, it's just time to work harder. It's just time to work smarter in many cases. Not necessarily harder, it's smarter.
Yeah.
But yes, being positive and just always having an end goal in mind and believing that you can get to a spot or keep moving up. That's what it's all about.
Well, so let's ask you then, what's next for you? What are your goals right now, let's say over the next year or the next 5 years?
Over the next year, so lately, since college, training-wise, my priorities shifted in college. I was doing more heavy lifting, going for max lifting numbers, and I was playing more pickup basketball, which, looking back, definitely helped my game evolve. Right now, I'm in a point where I've definitely changed my workouts. I do a lot of different things now. I've dropped over 10 pounds. I'm trying to be more fit and working on my golf game. That is something that after high school, I definitely took to. So now I'm two-sport athlete, I like to think of now. That's definitely something I want to be good at. And training goes into that a lot too. Training can help your golf game a lot. And then one other thing I started doing a couple summers ago, I did my first motorcycle race. And that's something that I'm pushing pretty hard for and that I've already seen a lot of gains for. I was definitely, my first race, I was in the bottom third of my class and was finishing in the bottom probably 40%, like in the overall standings. And literally just keep training and keep working at it. The next year, I was top 7 in my class and was top 33% overall. I was like 90th out of 300 racers. In a specific race, it's the same race year over year. And so that's definitely something I'm doing right now, wanting to push at the racing series. And so within the next 5 years, I want to be class champion for the given region that I'm in. And still working on my basketball game. And I'm eyeing a promotion here within 6 months. That's what I'm pushing for and working for. And then within the next 5 years, I want to move back to Michigan and hopefully have a couple more promotions under my belt and work in corporate and keep pushing in the motorcycle scene and get back to Michigan. That's the goal.
If you were to give advice or observations or information to middle school and high school athletes, we all know you can't redshirt high school, you can't get a do-over or anything else. What advice, though, would you give somebody or information about, let's say, athletics or school in general?
For one, you got to find what you're passionate about. So in my case in high school, I clung to basketball. And that's a great point you bring up about you can't redshirt high school. You get 4 years and that's it. And so I described 36 months or 3 years of a 4-year experience that was up and down, had its turmoils, but maybe not as much of the highs. But it was just that 1 year that made it all worth it. And then every other experience I've had since then, there's so many other highs I've had. And so, like if you're in middle school, I mean, if you want to play 2 sports, great. If you want to play 3, great. If you want to specialize, great. But you got to just find what makes you happy.
Nice.
But then work for it. I mean, if you're content with just going through the motions and just letting it play out for you and not taking charge and making it happen for yourself, and then that's up to you.
Yeah.
That's great stuff, Brent. Like I always say, you're right at the top with the gold, platinum, diamond standard of our training. We so appreciate your time. Sam, you got anything else for Brent right now?
No, unless, is there anything that you want to say specifically? Anything you want to talk about that we didn't get a hit on?
I was gonna say, when it came to the program and everything that it's given me over the years, I look at, like, when we talk so much about the high school period, but there were so many amazing things that it gave me and allowed me to do, like in college. So I was able to work with athletes, was able to, when I came home and like in the summertime, was able to train and play in a way that was still competitive, but wasn't, it still allowed me to do other things. Because when I look back on it, I can honestly say that for 36 months, the later half of high school, basketball was everything. That was all we did.
Yeah.
But I was able to take everything, and I was able to, with Sam and Tim, coach, and that was great experiences. Was able to play basketball while being able to do other things. Some of my fondest memories when it came to training and basketball came after high school. Like the alumni game that we had, the All-Star game, that was fun.
You had quite a game that game, if I remember, too.
Yeah, eight threes, 28 points.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And then later that summer was averaging like 25 a game in the Holland Summer League with a high game of 44 points.
Yeah.
And then like leading my IM team, like I think I had a 40-point triple-double in the playoffs senior year. Had a walk-on tryout at Michigan.
Yeah.
I just think of everything that stemmed from starting with this program and basketball, and just like how that applies to everything I do now and all the amazing memories that it's given me over the years. Long after I was like all out when it came to training.
Yeah, and I think that really ties in with something that we say to our athletes, but we could say more. We always talk about how if you think this is just about becoming a better athlete, it's not. I think great people tend to take hard experiences in one facet of their life and then move it to all facets of their life. So like being able to train hard is great, but being able to connect that to other parts of your life and then being able to use that going forward, even without, talking about training, but being able to do that in school or work or just looking back on it and being able to say, yeah, I pushed myself super hard. And it's going to benefit me for the rest of my life because now I'm in a different mindset than everyone else that didn't do that. It's kind of a return that you get for the rest of your life, and it's not just, now I'm out of shape, so there's nothing that I get from it anymore. Like, you always can look back on that. Not that you're out of shape, I'm not saying that.
And I can say, like, if you put in everything to training or whatever activity you're doing, when you walk into a competition or you walk into work, you can walk in with a chip on your shoulder if you know that you've put in the work and if you know you've pushed yourself to be better. And then that goes to probably the two greatest like lessons and moments and messages that peak performance goes for. One that you just touched on, if it's just about this training session, if it's just about the next season, if it's just about sports, well, you're not looking at it right, because this can be so much more than that. And then also, we alluded to it a little bit, but just you can never get more time. I mean, that's always my favorite message, and the best message I always got from the program. That Tim was very good at always putting things in perspective. He always would talk in the number of days or the number of months. He goes, has it set in that in 522 days you're going to be done with high school basketball? And it's very true. It's all about what are you going to do with the time you're given, because you can't ever get more of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we sure appreciate it, Brent. We are thrilled that you were the first Maxx Out alumni that we got to talk to, and we're going to be obviously putting this up shortly, but thank you for your time. We appreciate it very much. Sam, you got anything else?
No, if you guys like this kind of stuff, let us know. If you have any questions for Brent or for us, leave it down in the comments, and we'll definitely get in contact with Brent and transfer any of those questions to him so that he can give a good response for that.
Yeah, I'm honored that you guys had me on, and I'm looking forward to being a part of the program in any way possible moving forward.
Well, thanks, Brent.
Yeah.
You take care and have a great week. We will talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.